Director of Sound of Freedom has a new film out in theaters called Cabrini. So is it a film everyone should be talking about again? Or should we be skipping on this one? Hey everyone, welcome to Cinema, where we focus on the film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema, and today we're going to be talking about the film Cabrini. Let me know down in the comments below if you've seen it, if you should be talking about it, and everyone, let's give our own honest opinions, or if you're going to be looking over this review to help you decide whether it's worth the watch or not. So just Cabrini in the general synopsis is about this woman in the late 1800s, based on a true story, where she's going on a mission across the country from Italy to America in a stage of life where there's crime, drugs, and all these different impoverished children that are facing struggles in this thing. And she's trying to be a beacon of hope using her faith, and she's struggling against the prejudices against women during that time to overcome and become the symbol of hope that they all need. So, generally going into positives, I do think this film really well accomplishes its message. Being based on a true story, it was very informative, and Alejandro Gomez Monteverde is a really good director that also did Sound of Freedom last year that I haven't watched just yet at the time of this recording, but I do enjoy the high production value that really makes this film stand out. It really feels like this film was taken in the late 1800s, early 1900s, as this film takes place in, and I just really enjoy the sets designs that really makes it stand out, gives a good picture, especially either in Italy or the places in New York where it's run down in certain places. Obviously they're not going so far as to make everything nitty gritty, but they're still making it a good picture, having good visuals, good cinematography that centers in on a certain focus, knows how to control the camera to portray the emotions that are going on screen. And so the information goes about in quite a lengthy runtime that is still really good for its own means. It goes about this woman's life that she is facing. She has a history doing some good things in Italy, and she's setting up all of these different things, but then she feels called on a mission to America to help impoverished children in New York, because there's so much different things going on that's really hard on the people there, and things aren't being discussed or taken note of. And so she's facing these trials that you see throughout this film, where during that time women aren't always accustomed to being missionaries. Cabrini is essentially the first missionary, and that's why they are highlighting her as a central point of this view. And the way they build up her character or her life in general, portraying on screen, is really well polished and establishes her faith, establishes what she's after, and her determination to stand forth for what she believes is right. And she's always getting shut down at certain points by the church because of different views of how they view women being missionaries at that time. And so that creates a lot of setbacks. It doesn't go into every finite detail of every minute that you're expecting to go along, because this still takes place over a few decades of time as she goes throughout this place. And she's also facing health issues that becomes circumstantial to problems going on that she's trying to help out. And so she's trying to make the most of her life as she's determined to accomplish these goals. And she's always having to stick up to certain men, to the problems going on in the crimes in New York that really stand out in a way that I didn't expect, because there is some violence. Obviously it's not a rated R, heavy violence, murder, whatnot, but it still does have those moments that kind of surprise you, just kind of set the tone in a heavier note that I wasn't expecting going into this film. In general, just setting up the boundaries of what they're doing for Francesca Cabrini, portraying her life on screen. And there's some prologue at the beginning with words, and then there's a setting at the end, as you typically may expect, that really sets up generally how her life was viewed as a whole. And so the really well-rounded film that is crafted in such an intricate way that I really didn't expect. But going into some of the mixed aspects, this is a lengthy film. Obviously, it's taking over a couple decades of time just going over Frances Cabrini's life, not her whole life, but once she's called on her mission trip to America, all of these details are really fleshed out in a way that makes sense. It's missing certain details that doesn't want to make the film feel convoluted or too confusing or too much in certain means, but also it doesn't feel like the type of film you always expect to be watching for 2.5 hours. That's not a documentary, that's still portraying it in a well-mannered fashion. It might have tweaks on the portrayal of what it really looked like, certain key events that were changed for the purpose of the film, for dramatic effect, but I still do enjoy some aspects, but the longer runtime could turn people off, which I think throwing it into the mixed aspects. And also another thing about this film is that it is a faith-based film, obviously, with Francesca Cabrini being a Catholic saint, and all the general notes along the lines having to coincide with the men in the church. But there are certain aspects to where it feels like they almost set the faith aspect aside, outside of knowing who she is as a nun and the other saints. But there's not like as much visible prayer or church meetings or specific details where she's proclaiming the message of Jesus, or certain aspects which really grounds it down to a life of some Christians or Catholics in real life, because we're not always super heavy on mentioning God every minute, and that's something that isn't always involved with mission trips. And so I still enjoy the aspect this film goes after, but it does feel like they could have highlighted the faith a little bit more based on the prayer or certain struggles internally that she is facing as a believer, and how she is feeling set back in certain moments or pulling ahead at certain moments. And so just some of that could be a little offsetting for some people. I mean, it's very good for general audiences who may be turned off by the films that are overly complicated with the Christian faith. And even for me as a conservative, I'm just not too into films that talk about God every minute or contrive the story in a way that just doesn't always make sense, but it still pulls ahead in making such a great film and pulling it all its punches in the right notes. So that's just my personal thoughts on Cabrini. Let me know down in the comments below if you've seen it, if you have been looking forward to it, or just in general, if this review helped you out. Decide if you're going to watch it or not. And I have to rate it as simply 8 out of 10, which was a big surprise for me, and I do recommend you guys seeing it. And make sure to like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. Help me reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers here on this channel as we push forward and accomplish big things all together in this film culture community. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.